Previously on Picking Apart the Self.
Sometimes the things that we want to express may not be the most appropriate, but sometimes they are. And do we have the wisdom to recognize the difference and then the courage to speak up when it is an appropriate time?
This is To the Max, advice from today's experts to tomorrow's leaders. What exactly makes it so hard for us to express ourselves authentically? In part 2 of this series on authenticity in business, academia, and society, Dr. Opie will introduce the systemic bias beneath social norms through the lens of our personal experiences and show us why at times conformity can be a dangerous expectation.
My next question would be about the biggest challenges that you faced on your journey and how they have shaped you.
One of them is the tension between authenticity and conformity. Nowadays, I think it's very popular to say, I want to be my authentic self. But when you are, for example, interviewing for jobs, you're probably going to ask and notice, well, how do the people who have received the job, who've gotten the job, how do they present? Did they wear a suit? Were they in sweatsuits? Was it a white collar? And you may hate all those things. And so then you have to decide, do I conform so that I'm more likely to get the job? Or do I present more of what I want to? So for example, I have an afro. And I was told when I was in academia, you wouldn't wear your hair like that if you were still in consulting, would you? The implication was that my afro, which is how my hair naturally grows, is unprofessional. I've been told that I should straighten my hair. If there is an expectation when you go to work that everyone wears a business suit, that's different than expecting certain people to alter their identity to conform.
I think in your research, you talk a lot about, as you were saying, this struggle to be authentic in the workplace. When is it appropriate to be authentic and what are kind of the barriers to that? And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about some of the barriers that minorities might face in particular to being authentic in the workplace.
Yes, thank you, Max. And just a clarification, I use the term historically marginalized people instead of minorities because the census data shows us that by, I think, 2045 or 2050, white people will no longer be the numerical majority in the country. And so I do use the term historically marginalized for a second reason, and that is to speak to power dynamics. And we oftentimes don't talk about that, but this is critical when we discuss authenticity. So authentic presentation, it may result in backlash or a penalty. You may quickly be told, as I was, okay, you wouldn't wear your hair like that if you were still in consulting, would you? Well, let's unpack that. That is because this was a white woman who, by the way, her hair was wet at work when she was asking me this question. So she had jumped out of the shower, driven to work, and her hair wasn't fully dry. And here I was with an afro, which I had taken time to, hopefully my afro looks nice. You know, I had taken time to groom myself. She had not yet, but she felt comfortable asking me that question because of the power dynamics that are embedded in the question. Afrocentric hair, and I'm referring to Afrocentric hair as the natural hair that grows out of my head, which is coily and curly, is not aligned with the stereotype of what is professional. On the first day of some of my classes, I'll ask the students to Google search, who is an entrepreneur? Who's a business leader? It doesn't tend to look like me or like you, Max. So if there's this prototype or image in people's minds, then if you diverge from that, they're expecting you to begin to conform. And so that means I might straighten my hair. What I'm talking about are norms of professionalism. The very norms that organizations use to decide who fits in and who doesn't, to decide who's a good student and who's not. And I'll give you one that may seem objectively valid, which is someone who is extroverted, who is very outspoken, charismatic. Those are typical attributes that you hear describing a business person or a leader. But there's a book called Quiet, which talks about how organizations are missing out on a lot if we only listen to the people who speak first, who speak the loudest. But if you have literally, for example, class participation, you're applying to college, and class participation in part is based in college, is based on the number of times you speak in a class. Now, hopefully professors are also assessing quality. But between quantity and quality, it's easier to just make tick marks for quantity
Right.
Thereby, therefore rewarding the people who speak up the most. But those aren't necessarily the people who have the most valuable statements.
Mhm.
So that's an example of a barrier to authenticity. And I think that's a barrier for everyone, but it especially inhibits people who are from historically marginalized backgrounds because they may have further distance from the prototype of what is considered professional or successful.
Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and discovered something you can apply in your own life. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe. See y'all next time.